Okay. Hi, welcome to Circus Talks panel discussions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on the circus world. My name is Kim Campbell. I'm the editor of Circus Talk News, and I'm here today with some guest panelists from the mental health world and the circus world to discuss the repercussions that are occurring in the circus industry, particularly on the mental well-being of artists and people in this business, because some of the repercussions that are sort of obvious are loss of income, loss of ability to practice one's art. There's probably a bunch more, and we're probably going to discover them while talking to our guests here today. Before we begin, I'd like to let everybody introduce themselves, and I'll start with you, Janelle.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. My name is Janelle Peters. I am a contortionist and an aerialist in the United States, currently in Denver, Colorado. I'm also a licensed social worker and a therapist, and I have a small private practice. In addition, I'm C.Psych on the internet, and I create like mental health and psychoeducational materials that are geared towards circus professionals and circus people. And I also offer occasional consulting for folks who are doing kind of a decision-making process in their circus career, where I bring kind of a mental health and therapy informed take to decision-making process with them.
Wonderful, thank you, Janelle. Dr. Kate Hayes, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, and thank you very much for including me in this panel. I'm a psychologist with a practice in Toronto, Canada called The Performing Edge, and I focus in particular on working with athletes in sports psychology and also with performing artists, and see circus as kind of a combination of the two.
Excellent, thank you. Michael Day.
Hi, I'm Michael Day, and I work for Equity, the performers union in the UK. We have about 48,000 members, and I look after the areas of variety and circus, which covers maybe about 10,000 members in the UK. And I have national responsibilities for that area. And also in the London area, I have a patch that I look after the workplaces and the legal problems of members. So I don't have any mental health background as such, but we have a working party looking after circus, and one of the strands of that is mental health. So we've had that group going for a year, and it has produced some interesting discussions. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to hear from you. Lisa Husseini, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Lisa Husseini. I'm a business and career coach for creatives. I'm based in Miami, Florida. And so while I come from the classical music world myself, I work with people in all corners of the arts, including the physical performing arts.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And Dr. Fleur van Rens.
Thanks for having me here. So I'm Fleur, and I'm a lecturer in sports psychology at Murdoch University. I'm also an aerialist, and for this reason, I've been applying a lot of mental health related research to the circus community. So I do a bit of research, a bit of teaching, and I set up some projects with some local circus schools in Perth, Australia.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my first question now is going to be for you, Kate, which is how can circus artists deal with the isolation of quarantine? And what's normal to experience under these circumstances versus a sign that you're not coping well?
So I think the thing that is normal is for absolutely everybody that this is a very strange time, and recognizing that that's true. Mm-hmm. And so we all need to be practicing whatever kinds of coping mechanisms we've got. Probably the first one that I would start with is a very simple thing, and it's something that all circus artists know from a physical or physiological perspective, and that's breathing. Mm-hmm. And by that, what I mean is deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, which is absolutely necessary to get your muscles to perform. But the other piece that is vital about it is that it is also something that will calm you immediately. And it's the kind of the fastest, best thing that one can do. So It may be something that you do automatically when you're performing, but really can put some energy into right now in terms of practicing it. Kind of the easiest thing is to think about on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is totally calm and 10 is peel me off the ceiling. What number am I at right now? Can I breathe myself down to a number that feels manageable right now so that I can focus on right now? So that's a beginning thought.
Yeah, that's very important. And a lot of people are probably dealing with that very acute reaction, especially in the early stages of coping with all the bad news that's coming out about the pandemic increasing. So it's important, I think. Fleur, what's the best way, or what is a way for people to deal with the angst and anxiety that comes with the financial insecurity of having lost all of your gigs? I mean, obviously you can't just rebook other gigs to make up for them at this point. So is there any type of strategy to help people deal with that you know of?
I think at this stage, obviously a lot of people have lost their jobs, not just within the circus community, but way beyond the circus community. I think for everybody, it's important to start focusing on the things we can still control in our lives. So you may not be able to book a new job. You may not be able to even train sometimes because you may not have access to the facilities to, for example, do your aerial acrobatics. But what are the things that you do still have control over? And I think in this case, it's very important to focus on maybe other parts of your life that are not the circus component of your life that you still do have a sense of control over and that you can nurture to facilitate all of the identities you as a person have. So you're more than just a circus artist. You have other identities. This may be the opportunity for you to develop those more.
Kim, you're on mute.
Thank you. That's a good point. And I was going to say, Lisa, we'll probably talk more with you about it, but I have heard a lot of artists focusing on what they can control is, updating their information for when they are able to go back to work is a strategy. So I'll ask you, Lisa, as a life coach, what professional personal development advice do you have for performing artists in this unusual situation and dealing with the isolation?
Totally. I think that anybody who works in a creative industry, something that they are experiencing the loss of alongside any other losses they're grieving is a temporary loss of the feeling of the flow of creativity. And we're seeing it a lot where people just feel it's like that's compounding on any other identity losses, maybe a loss of a job or something else. And so I think it's important to recognize that creativity is not this just one cup creativity, and then when you're out, you're out. In fact, oh no, I think I may have cut out there for a second, but it's something that grieving or any feelings of scarcity can really impede the flow of creativity. Sure. So the people I've been speaking with and will continue to speak with, I think that it's so key, as Fleur was saying, about looking at the things that we can control. It's also key to look at the areas in the world where there is abundance, and we can see it all over in the midst of everything. There are places where abundance is flowing and new is popping up, and even if it's not applying to you just yet, to see that that's a possibility, the creativity will come back at some point.
That's such an important thing to hear right now, Lisa. Thank you. I think it's really true. A lot of people are trying to get into different projects and moments of creating, and they find themselves a little unable to focus. And I think that it's probably because when you're worried about your basic, level of survival, it's hard to reach that part of yourself. So I appreciate that thought. Michael, do you have any resources through Equity that can help artists deal with the isolation or the financial setbacks in particular?
We have been keeping our members informed on a day-to-day basis about the financial side, because our government, I don't know if it's different everywhere else, but they've been announcing things, drip feeding them. So first of all, they did something for people employed, and it was quite a while after that that they started addressing people that are self-employed, which covers most of our members. So we've had to advise them on how they claim a benefit called universal credit, which is our sort of basic lowest safety net. And then there's other benefits they might be entitled to, like employment support allowance, which relies on having made sufficient national insurance contributions. So we've also got our benevolent fund, which is kind of like it's usually just used for somebody who's ill and can't pay a bill or something like that. But we've massively topped it up with some funds that we had, so that more people can get access to emergency funds just to get them through this time. So that's what we've been prioritizing at the moment, just telling people how they can survive the next few days, few weeks, whatever, through this difficult time, because everybody has lost their work. And then we've also been helping people that are stuck, either trying to get home to the UK, or they're stuck in the UK trying to get home to somewhere else. No flights. So, you know, it's a very difficult time. So we've had things on our website every day, you know, a document that's just been added to every day. And that's what we've mainly been doing for the last week.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point, Michael, is about how, like, in the UK, though, you have very specific kind of resources for the population there. And now each area probably has different resources. So maybe that's something each person can mention when we get your question. In addition to the questions I'm asking you, is what measures you know of in your country that are being taken to help artists, and resources. And on Circus Talk, we actually have a resource page right now that's broken down country by country, and we are listing the links there. So whatever you share with us here today, we'll also add to that. But thank you, Michael. Janelle, I want to know if you can share maybe like a personal strategy or coping skill that you have for dealing with the quarantine, or one that you might have heard from some of your artists when you speak to them.
Yeah, you know, something that, this is kind of the social worker in me. We like to think in a systems lens and to think kind of bigger than just the individual when possible. Is a reframing of why we are quarantined and why we are stuck in our house and why we are not gathering in large groups. Is not because it's being forced upon us, but because it's the responsible choice to care for people who are immunocompromised, who are elderly, who are not going to be able to stand up to this virus with their immune system. And for me, I find that extremely comforting, and it provides me hope and a sense of agency when I am thinking about the enormity of the situation. I also think of the enormity of the kindness, generosity, and sacrifice that everybody is making on behalf of those people who need it and who would be in very grave danger without us hiding in our houses to protect them.
That's a good point. Yeah, and it's kind of like, I've heard that said before with kind of on a much simpler scale. Like, if you didn't feel like exercising that day, instead of being like, oh, I have to go to the gym, you kind of have that reframing where you say, oh, I get to go to the gym. I'm excited that I have the privilege to be able to do this, you know? And it's kind of like changing your aspect, like, I'm healthy right now and I'm getting to help protect other people, right? Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. Cool. So let's see. Fleur, what are some of the after effects that you predict could happen in the kind of like in the psyche of not just artists, but probably everyone, because this is unprecedented in our world? And do you think that circus artists or athletes in particular are especially equipped to recoup or recover their normal lives after this is over?
So what we do see with high-level achievers in any area, be it circus, be it sport, being something else entirely, is that generally speaking, they have very high levels of resilience. So although that doesn't mean that you aren't affected by the enormity of things that are going on right now, generally we do see that these are people who will be able to adapt after they've wrapped their heads around things. So from that perspective, you might expect that perhaps circus artists, professional circus artists, will be able to deal with the situation a little bit better after the situation is over. But that's a best guess type of scenario, of course, because we don't know how long it will take the circus industry to get back on its feet. And I think related to that, what we need to consider is that circus artists are in a very tricky situation, because we're all saying, oh, we're being sent home, or maybe we are somewhere where we aren't home and we are locked in our houses there. Well, what I've heard from a lot of touring circus artists is that they struggle because they've been sent home. They're supposed to be happy that they at least got sent home. But now they find themselves having to play as though normal life is normal for them, even though that life isn't their normal life. Their normal life is traveling with other people and continuously changing locations. So for them, this normal life that they've been sent back to is actually not normal at all. So they struggle with that component too.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And I've heard people saying that this virus will cause the industry to kind of like reevaluate the high level of travel and the impact that it's having on everyone. And I just wonder how that would even play out, you know? I mean, how would that work? Would circus become hyper local, or would we think harder about maybe lining up tours so that there's less back and forth? But I guess that's not really a psychological question. That's more of a infrastructure question. Cool. So, Michael, artists are a lot of times they're like independent contractors, and that's how we call it in the U.S., or entrepreneurs. I don't know what you call it, but those people tend to have less healthcare options sometimes because they don't have a steady healthcare coverage, at least in the U.S., and I'm not sure about the U.K. But I want to ask if you have any tips for how someone who doesn't have a steady income or exceptional healthcare coverage, how they can get mental health help.
Okay, well, the way it works in the UK is we have this thing you probably heard of called the National Health Service, the NHS, and that really helps everybody from Europe effectively, because we have a reciprocal arrangement. So anyone who's in the UK from Europe can just go and use the NHS. The problems is with mental health. If you've got a mental health problem, it probably can take 3 to 6 months before you even see somebody. So you can go and see your doctor and they refer you to a mental health specialist, but then your first appointment could be 3 to 6 months time. But what we've got got things to help members now. There's the Arts Minds link up. Well, I expect you've got the link for that. But we also have our 24/7 helpline, which is a line that any of our members can phone any time of the day. And that can lead to up to 6 counselling sessions that somebody can have for free. And if they need to carry on after that, they'd have to find some funding. But that's with an organisation called the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine, BAPAM, which you can also give the link for. People don't tend to have health insurance in the UK if they're from the UK or Europe, because we have health services and we don't need them.
Okay.
So, but this is in addition to that, just to speed up the time frame that you can actually get help.
What about you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, Lisa, you're in the U.S. Have you heard of any resources for U.S. Artists or performers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the main thing at this point is for any artists who are struggling with any mental health circumstances, whether they be serious situations. Sorry, my cat decided to join. Whether they be serious situations or just feeling malaise, to continue to look into resources, especially we're seeing on the federal level every day, new resources being opened up in terms of unemployment, in terms of continued benefits. So that's where I'd start, because I know when this first started, a lot of people who couldn't afford, didn't have health insurance, were concerned about then affording therapy. Alongside of that, you know, I myself, and I'm seeing a lot of other coaches and therapists donate certain portions of their time to help. And I think we're going to see a spike in that. And then also in addition to all of that, I think that there is a moment here, and again, I speak to people who are simply just struggling with the moment and not dealing with an underlying more serious situation. But I think that there's a moment for all of us to learn how to ask the people in our support network to sit and have a conversation, and for us to learn how to listen and be present. And I think a lot of us, we tend to like dive in and just talk to whoever's in front of us. But even amongst friend groups and support groups, I'm seeing people ask, hey, can we put aside an hour, and the first half hour, I'm just going to talk at you and I need you to just listen, and then let's switch. I think that can be really helpful for a large majority of people.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think a lot of us are having these conversations with our friends and family to reassure each other, and it does help to know that, I mean, that's a strange phenomenon, that it helps to know that everyone in the world is currently in the same situation. I don't know why that helps, but it's also the most terrifying thing, I think. Janelle, I saw you nodding your head at what Lisa was saying. Do you have anything to add?
I completely agree, Lisa. I think one of the best things that circus people have going for us always is the people around us, is our communities. When I think of a group that's going to have the resilience and the creativity and the ability to collaborate and the ability to like come up with like out of the box strategies and solutions to something like this, it's circus people. And I've seen my community leaning heavily on one another, both in terms of, like we've got this group that's doing these workout classes that are donation based, and people are able to make a little bit of income from that, and to have these like huge classes of like 40 people on Zoom, all laughing and cracking up and like showing each other their cats and doing push-ups together. And those are the things that are preventative when it comes to mental health. We don't want to think of just having a mental illness and then having to do something to fix it. We want to think of what we can do on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis to keep our mental health healthy.
That's a good point. And Kate, and you're in Canada. What's the resources like there for people mentally and well-being wise right now?
Right now, certainly the federal government has put in place a number of fiscal subsidies that I think have been quite reassuring for many people. There has been a structure of artist health network support. I think another piece is a number of organizations of psychotherapists, psychologists, and licensed social workers who have come together to offer some free services, particularly to people in healthcare, recognizing that we need our healthcare people to be as strong mentally and physically as they possibly can to be serving the rest of us. So there are a number of structures that I think in the future may lead to some very interesting and useful collaborations, which will be wonderful. But I love the idea of the Zoom classes and the sense of connection that people are finding, because initially this was certainly called social distancing, but in fact it's physical distancing and social connection. And feeling that sense, I had an email interchange a couple of days ago with somebody who I haven't been in touch with in 15 years. And it was just wonderful to hear from him. And to be really celebrating all of the different kinds of connections that we've got and that we can create.
Yeah, and I find it kind of inspiring how adaptable humans are. I mean, it's been a week or two that most of us have been cooped up, maybe a little bit longer, depending on where you're from. And even though we're all under tremendous stress, it seems like we're finding ingenious ways to kind of make up for those lack of physical connections that we have. And, I wonder, Fleur, if you can speak to how that lack of physicality could impact circus artists and performers in particular, and if there's any creative ways beyond obviously the Zoom workouts that we all know about and love, that people can do to stay connected with that part of themselves, or even indeed to stay, ready for when they're kind of re-entering the workforce.
To pick up, I hope I can remember them. First thing I want to say though is that I think in Perth, Australia, we're a little bit behind the rest of the world in the sense that I've only been asked to work from home since last Thursday. So actually we haven't been in full isolation yet, although circus schools have been forced to close down for about a week and a half. So in terms of that first component that you mentioned, circus artists are used to touching a lot of people and being touched by a lot of people. And that does affect how the brain works. So to some degree, a lot of people will feel a deprivation of that sensory input. And as a result of that, some people will feel very sad because they feel a need to be hugged or hug someone, touch someone, be touched. And that isn't something we can easily replicate if you don't have, a pet or another person in your home to give that hug to. So then really, our only other solutions are indeed conversations over the internet, singing together. There's a lot of research showing that singing together, even via the internet, apparently creates a level of social connection that you don't really achieve when you're talking to a person. So that's something people could explore. You don't have to be a good singer. It's just about the singing together component. That seems to be the important component to get some benefits out of that. I forgot what the rest of your question was. Sorry, there was something more to it.
Yes, I was asking also if there's any type of benefits to maintaining a routine, a training routine, or to feel ready to re-enter the workforce when the restrictions are lifted. Yeah,
so having some sort of a routine is definitely beneficial because it keeps your daily rhythm going. It may not be possible because that routine may include having equipment or other people to your availability, which you simply do not have. So then it's thinking about other exercises that you could do to substitute what you would normally do and make it safe, because we don't all have crash mats in our homes. So that's also something important to consider. So it's about, like Janelle said, circus people are creative people. It's about being creative and being safety conscious in what can I do, what routine can I build with what I have to my disposal right now, and knowing that everybody in the world is in the same boat. So even though you may feel as though your skill level may go down a little bit, be kind to yourself and forgive yourself for that, because in this situation, there's not much else you can do, and other people are experiencing the same problem. I would even say sometimes stay away from social media a bit, because you see a lot of people uploading lots of stuff of difficult skills of people who have that aerial rig in their back garden that you may not have, and that causes a lot of anxiety for people. So I would say within that routine also maybe set half an hour in the morning and in the evening in which you would like to check your social media, but stay away from it for the other moments of the day so that it doesn't increase your anxiety.
Yeah, that's good advice, Fleur. Janelle, I see you nodding a lot and you have something to say. I just want to comment on Fleur's thing and throw it to you in that I just want to mention that, like, we all know a million circus artists, and one thing that most of them have in common is that they do like to train a lot. It's like part of their regime for their own mental health. It's not just a physical health thing. So this does impact them, I would imagine, like an athlete. So yes, what's your response to Fleur on that?
I love everything that you just said, Fleur. I wholeheartedly agree. And I want to expand also because I think it's very easy to think of circus training as being only the physical training, building the muscles, building the technique, building the skills. There's also a lot that goes into musicality, that goes into quality of movement, that goes into expressiveness. You could do a whole course in mime in your living room. And when you go back and you get your aerial muscles back, holy cow, now you have this ability to express yourself in a way that you never would have if you hadn't been forced to stay on the ground and work on your expression instead of just on your skills. So I always think, you know, what I'm doing personally, I'm a contortionist and an aerialist, and I don't have access to aerial training equipment. This is the longest I've been on the ground since I began training. And I've been working really hard on my handstands, working really hard on my contortion, working hard on my dance. I'm taking ballet classes online, and really trying to expand into areas that didn't get the attention when I did have access to the aerial training.
Does anybody
Your
have
mic is off.
to add to that? It looked like Lisa, you looked like you wanted to speak there for a minute.
Yeah, just a small thought. So as somebody who's not a circus performer myself, and my world expands beyond that, and I've spoken with a few circus performers in the past weeks, it's just a reminder that to the rest of the world, to those who aren't regularly running in the circus circles, what circus performers are able to do with their bodies is quite extraordinary. And so I know that back to that whole creativity portion about what people can be doing now and even just occupying time, I think there's value if there's a need for connection to also broadcast things that may seem routine to you are still really fascinating for the vast majority of the world to watch. And I think that that especially as time goes on, you'll start to see that the need for that will be much more, especially for non-circus performers who honestly have no idea what to do within their four walls, being cooped up.
That's a good point, Lisa. It's still amazing, even though we're not doing it at the moment. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or a topic to mention that we haven't covered? Fleur? And then Kate.
I think we kind of missed an important thing, probably because we all work in this area, but of course this is also the moment where people can start working on their mental skills. So working on their breathing exercises, working on their motivation, working on self-talk, working on other ways of anxiety regulation, mental imagery. This is also the opportunity where you can start building that mental capacity to come back even stronger after this is all over.
Yes, that's well said. Kate, you wanted to add something?
There, sorry. Absolutely, that was just the direction I was going in, that Fleur was speaking about, the mental skills that people practice right now, and Fleur listed a number of them. I think another one that I would add in would be goal setting, and really figuring out both short-term and long-term, and how do I negotiate goals at a time of uncertainty would be a particularly important one. Mental imagery can do a ton of work in your mind about any of the physical pieces that you were doing, you will be doing. Certainly self-talk is huge. What kind of preparation for performance works best? How do I want to organize things systematically for half an hour before I go on? All of those kinds of things are things that you can really have time now to figure out and to practice, and they will stand you in very good stead, both as a circus performer and in life in general as well.
Thank you, Kate. Janelle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, if it's okay if I kind of turn us in a different direction, is that all right?
Sure.
I just want to kind of recognize that right now, the goal of this is that we're offering resources, we're offering strategies, we're offering things to do. And I want to really highlight the reality that being in a situation that is so uncertain, that is so unstable, that can be so anxiety inducing, can be really traumatizing in and of itself. And for people who've experienced past trauma, it can be really re-triggering of that trauma. And so I don't want folks listening to go away thinking that the only right thing to be doing right now is like working on this and practicing that and doing this and gaining this skill. You can also just lay in your bed and cry if that's what you need to do. And it's very hard to admit that that is what you need to do, especially if you're spending time on the internet, because folks are doing a lot on the internet. But more than anything, I think this is a time as well to be very tuned into your own emotions. Let them come forth and through you as they need to, because they're better out than in. And you can move through them as a process, and they will change, but don't feel like you have to force down bad emotions, fear, sadness, grief, uncertainty. Please, everybody listening, like feel your feelings, even if they're very unpleasant. They are not permanent.
That's so important. I'm so glad you said that, Janelle. I saw a meme that I shared with a lot of people, and I won't use the curse word, but it said like something about like, you know, it's not the time, you don't have to be super productive because it's a bleep pandemic, you know what I mean? So it's not, I think the reason we feel inspired to mention productivity and because sometimes it's a coping mechanism that helps people, but also not just a coping mechanism, but also a way to access a different part of yourself. But you're right, there is a grieving phase, I think, that we all have to go through, right? You know, and it's probably different lengths and different, it looks different for everybody. And where are we grieving? You know, we're grieving like a lot of things. So I'm sure it's very complicated.
Yeah.
I want to talk, and then I think we should wrap it up, but I just want to ask about if you, and Michael, maybe you have something to say about this. There's some speculation that this pandemic will, you know, economically impact all of us, the whole world, for a very long time, and the performing arts may have a little bit of a stumble before it kind of comes back online, and that certain companies and theaters and things might not return at full strength. If that's the case, is there any positive outlook or any kind of transformation message that we should keep in mind while we're trying to prepare for that uncertainty?
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of trouble hearing some of what you were asking.
This was a question for Mike about how there's some uncertainty about whether the performing arts world will begin at the same place that it ended at. You know, will a lot of theaters close up? Will some companies fold? This is something that's kind of scary and all that uncertainty, but is there some kind of method or resource or thought we should keep in mind while preparing for that scenario?
I mean, we've been trying to avoid that happening. I mean, for example, when all the theatres closed, we were working with the theatre companies so that they were having to pay our members, but we didn't want them to go out of business in the process of doing that. So the agreements that we were coming to with the theatre managers were very much with the thought that we want them to be able to open up again when all this is over. So we hope that there will be an industry to come back to. The Arts Council are also looking at it that way as well, that they're planning on, you know, carrying on with their funding of the arts. So yeah, I think it's the commercial producers, the ones that tour in the big tented circuses in the UK, that are probably going to find it the hardest to get going again. But individual artists who do smaller gigs and festivals and things like that will probably find it easier to get going again if those sorts of things happen. So yes, it's very much on our mind that we want there to be an industry after all this. Can I just ask something else as well for a bit later? I wondered what the unions in other countries were doing, like Australia and America, Canada, whether they were helping performers like Equity is helping its members. So any comments on that would be useful for me.
Fleur, maybe you could comment on that in Australia.
I find this a difficult question to answer because I don't work as a professional circus artist within Australia. I don't work in that capacity. From what I know, healthcare perspective, we've got our Medicare, just like the NHS in the UK. I know the Australian Society for Performing Arts Healthcare has some resources available in terms of what is currently going on and what the effect is on the performing arts world within Australia. But we also need to consider that Australia has also just recently had the bushfires that also had a massive impact on the economy in the East Coast and also impacted on some circus schools there. So I don't feel comfortable giving a very clear answer on this topic at this stage because I don't think anybody currently knows what the government is going to try and help and what the government actually has available given the investments they have already had to make this year.
Does anyone else want to comment on the US, or should I? Okay, so what I know about the US is that the federal government has decided to consider gig workers and independent contractors for their unemployment coverage for up to 4 months. We don't have a circus union. There is an actors union, but it's pretty particular, I think, to like Broadway and then to the film industry. And I don't think circus is considered to be part of that performing arts. So it's particularly tough in the US, I think, for that. Janelle, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can add to what you were saying, Kim, in the United States, what I have been seeing is rather than kind of a top-down governmental approach to providing a safety net for circus artists, I've seen a lot of grassroots and a lot of individual small companies who are doing fundraisers or virtual shows or selling merchandise. There's a lot more of that like microcosmic support and like community support rather than systemic support.
Yeah, definitely. Kate, did you have anything to say about Canada? Is there a union for circus or for performing arts?
That's really an area that I am not tremendously familiar with.
Okay.
Wish I could say anything. I think the level of governmental support in general is probably going to be the major thing that's going to help.
Yeah, and from what I've heard on Peace, they've signed an association, a circus artist association in Canada that sort of helps artists touch base with those. So if you're looking for a resource in Canada, you should probably visit the OnPeace website for some additional funding ideas. Okay, well, I think it's almost time to, oh wait, Lisa had something to add. Go ahead, Lisa.
Sorry, I just wanted to hop on the original question that you had asked, Michael, and just add something else in there, which is kind of to what Janelle was speaking of earlier. I think a lot of people are tempted to worry about the future. And that's not saying that that's not a valid discussion point, because I think it is. And if for people who are really still stuck in their process, whether or not they identify that process as grieving, just like the confusion and the anxiety, I think there's a lot of concern about like, what will the future be? What does this mean? How, like, do I need to be doing something now? Will I be missing out? And I think for anybody who is listening, who is experiencing any level of anxiety on a daily basis, the future will change, but also the future always was going to change anyways. And I think it's a really great opportunity to get to practice presence in the moment, being present in the moment and dealing with that. And also, I would say to anybody who's gone through the grieving process and now is really wondering from a non-anxious place, like, how do I prepare for the future? I would say to spend some time thinking about, you know, what in the past paradigm was not working for you? What did you complain about often and wish was different? Because now in many ways, the future isn't set because it's still being created as we go on. And I'm not convinced that the future, while there will be negative aspects to it for sure, that for people on an individual level, that it may not, I think it's totally possible that it will create a paradigm that for many people gives space to build the actual career that they they wanted and address some of the problems maybe they were facing in the past. So yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's sort of like helps you clarify what's important to you, because this hardship makes you kind of dial in on that. Because that's really all you have to dial in on right now is this micro world rather than the macro world is too big. There's too much uncertainty to know. So you have to kind of focus on your own stuff a little bit. That said, I think that was a good parting statement from you, Lisa. I wanted to ask everyone else to consider just what they'd like to say to the circus sector, a message of hope, hopefully. Maybe we can start with you, Fleur.
So my overarching message would be think about the things that you find important in your life. That may be just family, that may be circus, that may be something else entirely. And focus on sticking with those values that you believe in. And then I truly believe that as long as you stick to those, you will find a way to continue forward. So focus on your value systems and stick with what you find important.
Thank you, Fleur. Janelle?
Fleur took mine. I actually, what I would add on to that is, just be as kind to yourself and as patient and generous with yourself as you are being with your friends, and allow them to extend that kindness to you as well.
That's very important. Thank you. Thank you, Janelle. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just to stay connected to your community, because it's very important. You're all going to have to keep each other going, really. That's it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good words of wisdom, Mike. Kate, do you have anything?
I love the comments that people have been making already. I think I'm still going back to Janelle's really important point of allowing the feelings to be present. And so I want to piggyback on that a little bit. And I tend to think of it as kind of a 1-2 process, that experiencing the feelings is tremendously important. And then the second part of it becomes, and what am I going to do about that? Whether, in fact, there is something that you can do, or whether you're just going to hold it and let it exist at some level in your life. And attached to that, or to all of the comments, is the importance of writing. And it's something that we certainly have plenty of time to be doing right now. It can be the social media writing, but it can also be a wonderful opportunity for doing some journaling and really having a chance to go way deep inside and become a companion to yourself. So that's the piece that I would add.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I really appreciate everyone coming together today to talk to our community about this topic. It's so important. I hope it gives people some ideas and resources and permission to feel what they're feeling. And I just want to remind everyone that we have on Circus Talk, we have a resource page, a COVID-19 resource page for cancellations, but also for mental well-being and for funding, and we update it pretty much every day at this point, so please check that out. And when you're responding on any social media, we ask that you use hashtag COVID-19 Circus Response if you want to do social media about topics like this. Everyone, I appreciate so much you being here, and I hope that we get an opportunity to do this panel again, maybe in a month or in a few weeks. I'll email you and we will invite you back for an update. Thank you, everybody.